So this is a video for the introduction of a new uh, graphical user interface for Julia, which is called Pluto. So to install Pluto, uh, of course, it's quite easy. Just use the uh, uh, actually, let me start by launching the not the latest a Julia version later than 1.4, and you can hit the right square bracket to get into the package mode and just add Pluto, and it will work. I'm not going to do this because I've already done this. After you install it, you can just go using Pluto as just like using iJupyter, uh, because it also uses the web browser to show the graphical interface. So it's in some way its operation is quite similar to uh, uh, Jupyter Notebook, but in other ways it's quite different. So I now started a new session. Now, actually, the not a new session, the pluto.jl interface. So it provided a few sample notebook that you could get into, but because I've also created another demo which is like somewhat more complicated and hopefully more useful. So let's get into that. And so here's the environment that you want to play with. Uh, on the first line, there's what you see is a file address, and you could let's say I want to uh, so because let's say I want to save this or like move this to a new address. I can just change it and just hit move. If the program is authorized to do that, you can always do this because the if you start Pluto or you start Jupyter Notebook, usually if you don't specify anything, it's going to give you a place in the C disk. It's C somewhere or my document or something. It's not healthy for the computer, right? I'll just move into to D and to some folders. Um, and also I could change the path by just typing there, change the file name, a demo of, say, Julia and And the extension here that is quite interesting. The extension is .jl. So if I move it here, it says I'll move it there and say it worked, and I will go to this folder, so this corresponding folder, and I find this file. And if I open this, of course, you're not supposed to open this with two programs at the same time, but I'll just show this. I was I will literally open it with a text editor without any other things. This is very different from what is shown from Jupyter Notebook, because to look at the Jupyter Notebook, it's quite complicated. Either you compress it to a file, or you install that whole bunch of Jupyter things. But for Pluto, it's just pure Julia file. This is why I like it. Like it actually runs because there's you don't have to like if you have a program in a notebook and you want to convert it to JL, you no longer have to do that, and you could even change it with you could even edit this with a text editor and then use pluto.jl to write a document later. And this was quite convenient because you can source other things. So, for example, I can source. Sorry, I should say include. Uh, Perhaps not there, but but I can start another another file here, save it as using the uh, work save. And here, um, sorry, I should save it at .jl, otherwise Julia wouldn't recognize it as they are. Okay, uh, save it. Not this, but .jl. So this is my other file. I could actually include our demo of Julia+Pluto file. So this is a notebook, but it can be directly sourced from another program. Of course, you have to specify the environment to run this, but I'm just showing that it works and it's pretty convenient. I'm not going to save this because I'm going to upload it later. So this actually enables you to multiple things. Okay. Okay, so this is how you say create a saved file, and to use it, because everyone knows how to create a block by just by like clicking that additional mark and enter cell code here. I used it to do some embarrassingly easy example. 1 plus 1 is 2. You all agree with that, unless you are working in, let's say, Z1, 1 plus 1 is 0, mod 2. I should say, okay. So, but when I get to more complicated code example, what I mean more complicated, yeah, I mean it has more lines. So let's just say that there's a multiple line code. Maybe it isn't quite pretty, but it might run in Jupyter Notebook, but it no longer work in pluto.jl because uh, for some reason, it has decided that it's not a healthy practice. Uh, Either you split the cell into 4 cells, you can do that, um, or say, oh, sorry, or I could make this wrap into a begin end plot. So I'll just, so it has such options. If you click on this, wrap all code in the begin end block, like it automatically edit for you. The reason for that is that if you're running some complicated logic or complicated sequential, let's say multiple line of logic or calculation, you probably want them to be in the same environment. And using a begin end block or use some block makes the variable safer. So if you define accidentally, like if you accidentally define some other things at the front and want to use them in the later part, the using a begin and end part helps isolate those variable. And there's another reason for that, not just for sanity, but for performance, because the computer, if you're using a different block of code, it makes it easier for the computer to decide which scope I'm referring to. So in this case, I have a for loop and I want to print out A after being added 10 times to B. Yeah, this is just an example here. I could use the Latin block to specify the scope. Like in case you don't know what that is, you could always look at the document scope or scope of variables, because I mentioned it in another tutorial that I've written, I believe, which is about playing with the toys, not the toy boxes. Okay, so let's run this, and it gives me the answer. Uh, Somewhat contrived things may let you define an A here let's say a equals to 3. Now a plus equals to 0. And let's print out a here. So there will be a difference between this a and that a because the Latin block's isolated. Right, so this a is 3, which is not changed by that. Okay. So why the difference between? Why is there a difference? If I print out the a from the inner part and the outer part, this is because the Latin block doesn't change the exterior part of the variable unless you specify global, or let's say maybe this doesn't work, but right, a global is suddenly not working because what you're doing with A is the local V inside the Latin block, so it makes them safer. But it's up to you anyway. I think a better practice is to write functions and probably write modules to include your complicated logic. Uh, just for not just for like just for clarity, or just for just make your code look better so that it's easier to uh, it's easy for human and the computer. And similar to the uh, Jupyter Notebook part, you could create a Markdown block just by hitting Control+N, and this doesn't go manually. So if I write some text there, I just go Control+M. Now actually works. So Control-M gives you the Markdown option. This is just a shortcut. And besides, if you run to run anything, you go Control+Enter to just run it. So Control+Enter to run, Control+M to give you Markdown options. But let's change it. And it doesn't automatically appear there. You have to either click on this run button, or you do shift enter. Shift enter. Because the control enter is actually different. It creates a cell code. So control enter will run and create cell. All right. So this could actually work. And if you can do empty, you could do markdown, you could do LaTeX. Perhaps not all LaTeX. For example, if I go, I'm not sure if this works. So if I want to enter, sorry. Okay, it doesn't, not quite. So basically, if you just want a simple formula, you work. If you want other things like set notations, perhaps not matrices or not matrices, perhaps some more complicated math symbols, then you have to import other math things. However, I haven't done this part of experiment myself, so I'm not going to include this when it gets too complicated. Okay, and what I'm interested in here is to create a bunch of those templates to make you recognize how Julia language can be used to make mathematical animations with pluto.jl, because I have a previous repository of this pluto.jl to show you how to create interactions, or not interaction, animations, and how you could create a beautiful math graphs just with Julia with very few lines of code, and convert that into animations or manipulation some manipulation blocks by just a little bit of modification. But now I've changed this idea because Pluto uses a different way to interact. As I see, if I use uh, the binder here, I can input a value. I'm actually giving a computer a value for it to plot the function. Okay, so it works there. So how do I do that? First, you have to install pluto.jl UI. The installation is very similar. I think it comes with the package actually, but I think maybe those three packages doesn't come with it automatically. So I have to install plus interact web.io, and probably you should install a GR. But I think plus no, I think plus include that. Okay, that's fine. And I bind the a variable to the slider. If I change C, this wouldn't work because the if I change C, the input value of the slider bar doesn't go into C. And like if I do this bind C with the slider, this is actually a function coming from the Pluto UI. I could create such thing, and uh, and yes, there's more than slider. There are buttons, click box, and the text box that you could work with. Anyway, so and the thing is, um, you could create graphs like that, and you could right click on that save as, so you could save the plot easily. You don't have to worry about a lot of other things. I think it also works. Uh, okay, so what's more about the basic usage? There's lit docs. If you put your mouse or put something into like type into something, you could look at the help. So in Julia, you use this to um, toggle the help help mode. In Pluto, if I want to look at something, perhaps there's no such function. So function. If I type it here, you look at the arc, it automatically works. What if I want to, let's say, plot? Okay. What if I want something from a specific package? Okay, so I tried not to push this one too hard. Right. So after you have done the work, I think probably this is not right. The dx here should be d something else. I forgot. Partial, right? Change is partial sometimes, but I'll just show you a couple of more functions. And see, this button is says export. So just like R Markdown, or other things, if it's a like a workspace like this, it should be able to let you generate the JL script. If I download this, you actually get the same file. It's the same. I think it's quite similar. Right? And static HTML. So what I mean is that static is that you're no longer interacting with this. So if you really think of interactivity as a function, maybe you should think of some ways to get around it because it's no longer working. See, because and probably you see um, something, but I've had a little bit of search around the internet, but I haven't found any like solution yet. Uh, uh, okay, so because I'm only a user of Pluto, I use this to create some fun and hopefully fun animations. which are shared on GitHub and my YouTube channel, mainly about dynamical system and fractals, which I think is and spatial curves and spatial surfaces, which are I think are really fun. You can create on create PDF, but it's nothing more than using the function by your internet, not Internet Explorer, but web browser. Right, web browser. Okay, so um, okay, that's all first. That's all. Thank you.